What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Hope that you're having a lovely day. My name is Justin, and today I am presenting you my album review of Emerson, Lake and Palmer's third studio album, Trilogy, which was released in 1972. As with most of the album reviews, I will post a playlist in which you can listen to my first thoughts, initial reactions to each of the songs in this album. But without further ado, let's jump into it. As of right now, this is easily my favorite album from ELP. It has every single ingredient that I would expect from them, just like cooked to perfection. The arrangements that they come up with feel fresh, they're complex, they feel natural in the way that they all come together. There's a lot of interesting ideas, of course, mixing concepts of classical music with cinematic masterpieces and even moving into like folky, western kind of expanding themes. It just feels like a really refreshing take on progressive rock, even in the way that ELP do it. You can tell that the band paid special attention to the feeling of the music, to the composition of the music. This is very well exemplified by the first three tracks on the album, the Trilogy, or the Suite, the Endless Enigma. The whole trilogy is really great, but part one, just the way that we get into this album, is like one of the best openers that I've heard from ELP specifically. Lake's vocals deliver with ease, rising from soft-spoken questioning in the verses into more bitter and angered choruses. Palmer is just a force to be reckoned with in this one, of course, as always, but it's really nice to hear him here. He's always happy to experiment, always happy to be progressive in his drumming, in his percussion, and he's always looking for a creative way to drive the rhythm. And then of course you got Emerson with his magic fingers that just dance across the keys, organs, piano, synth, sometimes with blissful balladry and other times with furious fancy. This track is just one that really comes together. In my opinion, it's extremely catchy, it's really thoughtful, and I find myself singing this one all the time. It's one that easily gets ingrained in your head. And then even moving forward from the first part of the Endless Enigma, moving into Fugue. It's only 1 minute and 57 seconds, and yet it feels like an interlude led primarily by Emerson on the piano, but it feels like so much more, especially in lieu of the track preceding it and the track coming ahead of it. A bridge between the two tracks, it's solitary, it's short, but extremely sweet. I think Emerson plays his classical heart and his classical beats out on this one and shows that he's not just showcasing, he's providing melody and really nice compositions. Sorry about the thunder out there. There's a storm going. I like this piece because it so steadily builds into that final piece of the puzzle, the second part of the Endless Enigma, and I just think that it nicely develops on its own, but especially as that bridge. Endless Enigma Part 2 acts as a nice reprise for the whole thing, in which the band just strongly brings everything back together from the first section, but this time I feel with a little bit more fire. The embers have been stoked, and now we have a bit of a raging inferno going on in our hands. In those final moments of this track, I really love the alarming and distressing tone that Emerson comes up with on the Moog. I think that that adds just a really nice and urgent touch to the finale of this song, bringing it to a nice kind of grand climax. It's tracks like these opening three that portray to me what ELP really excel at. Why would I say accelerate? The perfect balance of their technical prowess, their progression, without it becoming cold or mechanical or lacking feeling. The skill, the composition, the melody, the heart, it's all there. It's perfectly portrayed in this trilogy of songs in the opening. And then from here we move into Roundup, from the beginning, which is just one of those romantic Greg guitar combinations, those ballads that makes all the women and some of the men swoon in the concert. I really enjoy the relaxed plucking of the guitar in this one, the mellow rise and the falls of the bass, along with, of course, the sultry singing provided by Greg Lake. It's just the perfect follow-up, a nice balance of soft and tenderness compared to the previous epic. And then just to make comparisons for comparison's sake, I really enjoy the ending that Emerson puts in here with his synth. I feel like it fits in so much better here than just, for example, in a song like Lucky Man, where it felt kind of random, a little bit out of place. This not only fits, but it adds to the blissful nature of the track. Now, after these four, what I would call perfect songs, we move right along because there is a new sheriff in town. The mood of the album changes for these next two tracks with the sheriff and then following in with Hoedown, we go into a much more Western vibe here with a much more country and folk kind of leaning. And even though the classical and romantic nature and atmosphere of the album has changed at this point, I actually think that the band handles this change and this shift actually really elegantly. The band carries a little bit of a less serious narrative, sure, but they do it with the same conviction, the same maturity that they've been showing throughout. I think specifically in The Sheriff, the dynamic between Emerson and Palmer is really nicely laid out as they kind of bounce off of each other and trade back and forth, their rhythms eventually ending in a bit of a ragtime piano solo that wouldn't really sound out of place at the Long Branch Saloon. Hoedown continues and furthers this Western journey. This is an adaptation of Aaron Copland's Rodeo, just in ELP's style. I prefer the band's original material. I like to hear them kind of come up with their own thing. I am really sorry about the thunder, by the way. I like to hear them come up with their own original compositions just because I feel like they do it so well. But this one comes across with so much energy, once again, so much heart, especially off of the previous track, really nicely just continuing that theme, that I would never skip it. And I actually do enjoy it. And apparently this track gained a lot of popularity at their live shows. I would say that Palmer's drumming in this track actually really stands out. It's especially frantic, as if he's a cowboy riding a really angry bull. This soundtrack and very cinematic experience ends this side of the album in really grand fashion before we move into the centerpiece and main course of the album, Trilogy. The namesake track of the album reopens this side with a hymn-like door that was closed previously in the opening trilogy. This is the perfect ELP song. This is the one that I would think of if I wanted to introduce someone into the band. This is the one that I would choose, showcasing every single side and facet of the band in glorious splendor. While the song details a relationship's end, the performance shows kind of different. It actually shows a very strong bond between each of the musicians. The track is broken appropriately into 3 distinct and different sections, somewhat like the 3 Fates off of their self-titled album, their debut, but just kind of once again, it comes together structurally a lot more coherent. Greg and Emerson begin with a pained and somber cascade, detailed with a lot of melodic pleading before Emerson playfully calls to action a little bit of a sonic change. Piano changes to synth, and empty halls that were forsaken come alive. I really enjoy how Emerson comes back and repeats some of the lines in the opening, but this time replaced with a little bit of a sharper and cutting-edge synth. The final moments of this one keep the aggressive synth, sprinkle in some organ and deep drum rolls, and retrieve the singing, but this time with a little bit more of a positive and relieved outlook. So not only does this song cover different emotional facets, but as mentioned, it covers different musical and composition facets of each member of the band. Living Sin. Organ riffs, deep, brooding vocals, dense textures. Greg turns in a very memorable performance filled with aggression and a touch of psychedelia, actually. It's definitely the strangest track of the album, a little bit of an eclectic choice, but I gotta admit, it's kind of fun, it's kind of good. I like how the band are choosing different places to go with their music. This kind of reminds me of King Crimson a little bit in moments. I personally just appreciate the band's adventurous spirit. They're willing to take risk in their music. They're willing to try and progress and try new ideas. And if they don't work, okay, they'll try something else. But they try. And isn't that kind of the essence of progressive music? Now, on one hand, I feel like the vocals are a little bit cheesy, a little bit try-hard, but it's inoffensive, it's ELP, they're not trying to take it so seriously, so just have fun with them. And then the album ends with a slow-cooked rising of Abaddon's Bolero. On one hand, I feel like this slow-cooked piece could have amounted to something maybe a little bit more interesting and final and climactic. On the other, I do appreciate its steady build-up with a lot of layers, a lot of moving sounds. It's one that takes patience, and I get that, but I do wish that it kind of amounted to something else. On a first listen and a few subsequent listens, it's kind of curious, kind of gets your attention, but I found that after a while I was just kind of like, Now, I really enjoy the bass playing throughout this one, and some of the ambience that Emerson provides is just palpable. Some of the synths sound a little bit dated. I can tell like what era they came from. Now, this song doesn't leave me anywhere near the verge of dislike, you know, contrary to maybe my comments and maybe how I sound. But it just doesn't quite take me where I want to be. It meanders a bit. It feels a little bit aimless. It does leave me a little bit unfulfilled, especially as the ending to such a brilliant album. It feels like a track with a lot of hot air and no blow. A lot of hot air and no blow? I don't even know what that means. Anyways, let's move on. Those are just a couple of my thoughts on each of the tracks in the album, but let's move into my favorite moments, my favorite lyrics, and the song rankings for this one. My favorite moments on this album is in The Endless Enigma Part 2. Specifically, the moment that Greg comes back in with the verse, singing to the ending, the whole thing. It's pretty much the whole song, but just from the moment that Greg comes in to the rest of the song. It's just such a glorious return, filled with splendor. I love how the band brings it back. I love the feelings I got in part 1, and they bring back those same feelings, but just stronger. This is a great composition. My favorite lyrics on the album are the opening lines of Trilogy, which are as follows. I've tried to mend the love that ended long ago, although we still pretend. Our love is surely coming to an end. Don't waste the time, you've got to love again. I think that these lines tell a lot about the relationship, a lot about the subject and the subject matter in this particular track. The feeling that you know the relationship is ending. And I think the more positive outlook, as in, don't waste any more of your time with me. We both know that this ship is sinking. I want you to enjoy your life, so spend your time trying to enjoy your life, instead of trying to salvage something that is unsalvageable. And then finally getting into my song rankings for the album are as follows from favorite to least favorite. The Endless Enigma, Part 1. Fugue. The Endless Enigma, Part 2. From the Beginning. Trilogy. The Sheriff. Hoedown. Living Sin. And Abaddon's Bolero. This is easily my favorite album thus far from ELP. Haven't heard all of them just yet. We've listened to their debut, Tarkus, Brain Salad Surgery, soon, Pictures at an Exhibition. But as of right now, Trilogy is rocking it just as much as the thunder outside of this room is rocking the windows. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you. I really appreciate you clicking on this video and just hopefully enjoying this review, hopefully enjoying some of the other videos on the channel. Of course, you can let me know your thoughts in the comments, your favorite moments, lyrics, song rankings, and that kind of thing. You can follow me on Twitter, support the channel on Patreon. You guys have been helping this channel grow and my life change immensely, so I thank you so much for that. And otherwise, I hope that you have a fantastic night. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye.